It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, time is getting closer, folks, for that magic day, November 5th. What's that day? Excuse me. That's the day we go to vote. And hopefully we're going to vote for people that we know and check their record out because it affects your lives. This is part 2 of a show I'm doing with Dr. David Moylan, who is the Schuylkill County Coroner. And part 1 is on our website. It's important because there's a lot of things that he said he was going to do, and he did them. And now there's the opportunity of finding out what's going to happen now for all of you residents in Schuylkill County, particularly in the coroner's office, and how does it affect your pocketbook. So Dr. Moylan, thanks for coming on the show again.
Real pleasure.
Part 2, okay, you talked about a lot of things you've done and you wanted to do and have accomplished, but there's a lot more going on. One of the things that you had mentioned on the last show was, when I asked you if you were in your budget, because you had mentioned that the county has to float a $12 million bond, which means that's like taking a loan, okay, and I could get into that, the whole structure as to throughout the years what happened, but forget about that. And I asked you about your budget, and you said yes, except in 2015 something happened, and it was nationwide, and that was the drug crisis, and that happens to be the opioid crisis. Now, Doctor, we have heard everyone and their brother talking about this opioid crisis, and it's good to talk about it, and it's good to sit down, and it's good to aware people, but what is being done, okay, in your area, okay, where do you fit in here?
Right now, Sam, we're just picking up the bodies. That's the state of the art. And I know in our county, several important efforts have been made, and one is the drug court that Judge Jim Goodman's working on. And up in Luzerne, they had tremendous success with that, where people that get assigned to the drug court, they're monitored very, very carefully. They get through it, and there's a very low recidivism rate where they fall back into their bad habits. I think it was around 13%. So it'll be key if we can reduplicate that success in Schuylkill County. But I want to talk about how one other nation has approached the opioid crisis or the drug crisis, and that is the island nation of Singapore. That's the country that we've heard about over the years, where you spit on the sidewalk, they will cane you, beat you with a cane. So they're no nonsense. But they had a tremendous problem with drugs in the 1970s, and they came up with a law, was called the Misuse of Drugs Act. It was draconian. Of course, we'll never have anything like that in this country, but I just want to use that as a model. They said that you were a trafficker if you had a gram of hashish, the distillate from marijuana, a couple grams of marijuana, trafficker. What was the punishment for traffickers? You were hung by the neck until dead.
Wow.
And first couple of years back in the 70s, they had to hang about 70 or 80 people a year. Same law is in effect now. They don't have to hang but anybody, a couple cases a year. And you don't linger on death row for months and years. When the sun comes up on Friday mornings at the Shangri prison, you're hung by the neck until dead. And they use it was a British colony, so they use the British long drop method.
Oh boy.
So it breaks your neck. You're not asphyxiated, you die of a broken neck. Terrible, terrible. And again, I've run as the pro-life coroner, so I don't think we'll ever see anything like that in this country, but we're seeing the effects of the drugs. God, it's just terrible going to these scenes and seeing parents after they lose a young person. And it's not just young people, okay? And I would say that
And it's not just poor people. It's all kind of people.
Every walk in life.
Professionals,
Every walk in life.
you name it, yes.
But we don't have a remedy like Singapore, but we do have something called death due to delivery of a controlled substance, okay? And if somebody sells it to you, a Schedule 2 or 1, 2 or 3 substance, and the person dies, that's a felony in Pennsylvania, if you can prove it. And that is a law that we have to avail ourselves more of. There was a epidemic out in the western part of our state, the Pittsburgh area, back in the 80s. I heard this story from one of the toxicologists that came to our annual symposium. But there was a variant of fentanyl. It was called methylfentanyl. And it's a unique substance. And it was only found in that one area of the Pittsburgh suburbs. Law enforcement was able to eliminate that person. The epidemic went away. So, you hear people say, well, why go after the little fish? You take enough little fish off the street, it's going to have an impact. So what I would like to do, again, working carefully with Pennsylvania State Police, and that's the organization that has all the criminology laboratory, for looking at evidence, and our district attorney, I would like to have a series of coroner's inquests to start bringing these people to justice. And I've met with so many families, Sam, and many of them are fearful that if they testify, that they're going to be next. And they fear also that some of these accidental drug overdoses, they weren't accidental. They owed money to the dealer, or the dealer was afraid of being ratted out, and they might give or sell to the decedent what they think was heroin. It wasn't heroin. When we get the toxicology back, it's pure fentanyl, which is 50 times more potent than a standard dose of heroin. So this is the problem. We might have redress to it through that delivery resulting in death statute.
Is that current right now? It's
current, yeah.
It's current. All right.
And we've tried a couple with our DA, and the defense lawyers are very tricky, and they look for any technicality to overturn it.
Well, the fact of the matter, it's killing a lot of people. It's killing a lot of young people. And like you said, in the coroner's office, you may look at a death or hear it on the TV or read it in the newspaper, and there's a lot more involved probably than what we think, okay? And here again, in order to bring that information to the table, you're seeing it firsthand. You're there with the parents or the loved ones or whatever. It must be heartbreaking. It must be heartbreaking.
There's no words for it. But what you were implying there with the family, there are some great organizations in our county. One family, the Zinkeviches in Tamaqua, have started this Safe Streets for Little Feet, and it's just tremendous that the work that they're doing there.
Have you seen any accomplishments being done? Because I mentioned before, we could talk about opioids until we're blue in the face, and you bring doctors in and lawyers in and congressmen in, and and everybody means well, believe me. But then after a while, you say, well, look, here's what we instituted then, and here is the results now. Do we have any of those things from all these meetings we're having? Has anything been accomplished from that?
The progress is painfully slow, Sam, painfully slow. And I would like to contribute to this effort in my third term, and hopefully that could become my legacy. But again, working with the DA, this coming Saturday, there's a very important meeting down at Penn State's Schuylkill. The DA is involved, and education
oh
is
my
important.
God, yes, and that's the only benefit I see coming from these get-togethers and meetings, et cetera, where they're informing people and the doctors are working with them. I know Dr. Mead was very active.
He had a wonderful show on your network.
Yeah, and I mean, and so he's there trying to help, as well as, you know, everyone else. I'm just hoping that we're seeing progress, you know, if we begin to see progress, you know. And do we get the help from the legislator to enforce those things? I understand you need lawyers, you know.
Sam, we're talking about the legislature.
Yeah.
Medical marijuana. That went through our legislature. Many of our local representatives tried to block it, but it was a tsunami. And now there's medical marijuana in our state. And how much longer will it take to have recreational marijuana legalized? And again, another heartbreak. We just had a death, young man. And I checked toxicology on every age group and said, nah, the guy's 60, he's not going to have positive. And sure enough, it comes back, okay, positive. But we just had one case, and marijuana was in the system. Terrible accident. So I think the old saying was, you sow the wind and you reap the whirlwind. I think that's what's going to happen with this marijuana.
Well, there's a lot of controversy on that. I mean, there's pros and cons, okay? And there's certain derivatives, I think, that are helpful. Again, without being a medical profession, but from what you read, okay, and I understand what you're saying. So that's something, I guess, that, you know, coroners and people in law enforcement see all the time.
You know, Sam, I've been practicing cancer medicine for close to 40 years, and we've used a drug for the last 25 called Marinol. It was produced by an ethical pharmaceutical house. It has a role, but they could easily have delegated to the pharmaceutical industry, where they have the experience in monitoring side effects, monitoring drug concentration, you know, to handle any needs for the medical drugs derived from the hemp plant. So.
Well, that's important. There's a lot of things that could be derived from that hemp plant that I think would be very beneficial. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm talking to Dr. David Moylan, folks. He's the Schuylkill County Coroner. We did a part 1 show, and he talked about everything that he did and accomplished, which again affects you as a taxpayer in Schuylkill County. But not only that, if you, God forbid, ever need a coroner to come in and to do what has to be done correctly, it's important. He's running for re-election November 5th, so he is now talking about some of the things he's done. When we come back, we're going to talk about new physicians, including forensic pathologists, and genetic testing for cancer. That's going to be very interesting. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. 24/7. You can watch all of our shows. Now, go to our website, ssptv.com, brand new website. You can find it on your phones. We had the apps, but now it's even better, because when you go to that website, all the shows are there, very easy to get to and watch all the local neighborhood shows we produce, including this one I'm doing with Dr. David Moylan, who is the Schuylkill County Coroner, no stranger to the show, but also he's talking about what he's done. On part 1, he explained that in detail. Now we're talking about some of the things that will happen if he's re-elected on November 5th. So, Doctor, we talked about the opioid crisis and how sad that is, but now recruitment of new physicians. Okay, why is that important?
Because I'm not going to live forever.
You're not?
No.
Oh.
No, and I want to see the program that we've established here be an ongoing thing, and that's the centerpiece has been the virtual autopsy. And again, if it's not the pathology or the coroner that's doing the interpretation of the scan, it would become prohibitively expensive if you had to call up the hospital and said, I'm sending you over some scans, could you get the radiologist to read them for me? It would quickly become cost prohibitive, and the big benefit of it, being able to get all this information for $80 to $100 versus $2,000 plus, that would evaporate. So I have one young doctor, and as a matter of fact, at Simon Kramer, the teaching institution that we have, he served as a extern when he was in medical school, and he spent 6 weeks with us one summer as one of his rotations. Now he's practicing internal medicine in Schuylkill County, doing a fantastic job, and we've had discussions, and I would like him to come on board. Again, $15 an hour, but I would like to groom him as the one who would be interpreting the scans in the future. And the other recruitment effort that we're in the process of accomplishing is getting a forensic pathologist. Now, there's plenty of pathologists in the state, but there's 3 certifications. One's anatomic pathology, where you're looking at the tissues, say from a gallbladder surgery or whatever. And then there's also laboratory pathology, where you're interpreting the results of a bilirubin or a alkaline phosphatase, so it's a chemical studies. And the third is the forensic pathology. And every autopsy doesn't need to be conducted by a forensic pathologist, but certainly some of them do need to be identified such. So in our state, forensic pathologists are scarcer than hen's teeth. You know what that means?
Yeah.
Hens don't have any teeth.
Yeah.
But over the years, we worked with several, and we're basically trying to conclude a contract with Reading Hospital. It's not Reading Hospital anymore. It was taken over by Tower Health. So we basically have to start with a new legal agreement with Reading Hospital. We currently work with a forensic pathologist named Wayne Ross in Dauphin County, and he's been providing excellent service. And I'm also investigating a private company that works out of Altoona that has their own forensic pathologist.
Why is this important? I mean, I
Well,
think I know the answer, the forensic pathologist. And why is that so critical for the Schuylkill County residents?
Again, we have maybe 4 or 5 homicides, murders per year. And when you're going to court trying to prove a case, you don't want the defense attorney to say, Dr. So-and-so, are you a forensically certified? You don't want that to come up to spoil the DA's prosecution. So again, we're committed to providing this service. Now, on your channel, I interviewed a famous pathologist named Cyril Wecht, and he was just interviewed quite a bit on CNN and Fox News with the Jeffrey Epstein death in custody that occurred up in Manhattan. And he has expressed, he was one of our speakers in April. He's going to come back this April 25th, 2020, but he has expressed interest in helping us out. So that would just be a great boon to the county.
That's a high-powered person. I mean,
Internationally known.
Yeah,
He was in on the Kennedy case.
Yeah.
And in fact, again, the importance of the forensic medicine here, forensic pathology. Did you know that the JFK autopsy was conducted by 2 regular pathologists that had never operated on a gunshot case? The Kennedy assassination autopsy was done by basically some rookies.
Wow.
Yeah, so that we don't want that to happen in Schuylkill County.
And just for a side note here, folks, the show he's talking about, that'll be a modern medicine show, and that should hopefully air sometime in October. I think you did 2 parts, right?
Yes.
A very informative, so it's modern medicine. I'm sorry, Dave, to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing about the recruitment of the physicians, I mentioned Dr. Joe Weber, Dr. Herb Rubright, and perhaps this new physician. As part of our virtual autopsy, it's not just putting the body through the scanner. No, we actually do a process in which fingerprints are taken on these investigative cases. We draw blood, urine, vitreous fluid, again, for toxicology testing. We also take blood and we put it on a specially prepared card that preserves the DNA forever. So if a paternity issue came up or some other identification problem, especially in bodies that have been decomposed, the DNA is very, very helpful.
As a coroner, I want to ask you this question, okay? You're a doctor, all right? So how important is it for a coroner to be a doctor?
It's not required. I have to say that it's not required.
I mean, I could run for coroner. What
You-
the hell
you
do
could,
I?
You could indeed.
Yeah, yeah.
And in Pennsylvania, 67 counties, of course, Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and Philadelphia County, they have 10, 15 MDs or DOs that are
Yeah.
a part of their services. But the other 65 counties, only 10 of them have doctors. And little Schuylkill County, we not only have one doctor, we have 3, maybe soon to be 4 doctors on the deputy force.
So,
Well, as I mentioned, the virtual autopsy, it's not just the scan, drawn blood. One of the physicians, a lot of times it's me, but not always, will go in and examine the body, clothed and unclothed, and looking for signs of congestive heart failure, stuff that we're trained for, signs of poor oxygenation of tissues.
it certainly helps.
Yeah.
We got about 4 minutes left. Genetic testing for cancer, and I want to touch a little bit on the MRIs.
Okay, well, the genetic testing. When you lose a relative, a loved one, did you ever want to go back and say, gosh, if I had only asked them that?
Yeah.
I've had that happen to me personally.
Yeah.
And there is now commercially available testing that would only cost maybe $100, in which fluid, tissues, blood could be tested genetically to see if that loved one was predisposed to the development of colon cancer, breast cancer. This would be invaluable evidence.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, invaluable evidence. And it's like if
Don't
I
they
had
have some of that now going on?
well, it's for living people, but I've been in touch with the manufacturers, and they are very interested in working with us on this. And again, the bottom line would be it's not going to cost Schuylkill County taxpayers anything, but it might be a service that we could offer to family members.
Boy, that's
if you could,
wow.
would you pay $100 for that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Without
you would,
question.
yeah,
Without question.
So
Just to know that. My God.
that is in the wings.
That's
that is
terrific.
in the wings.
MRI.
MRI. The CAT scan that we have, it's an older CAT scan. I picked it up for basically a song, but it has resolution issues on the brain. The brain is a special tissue, and of course, when you go to the emergency room and they want to rule out a stroke, they'll do a CAT scan quickly, but they'll follow it up with the MRI because it's much better detail. And there's been several cases over the years that I've said, boy, I'd like to define what's going on in the brain a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So I've been in touch with, again, some private radiologists, and to see if they would be able to help us out again after hours.
All right, Doctor, you're running for re-election. All right, and so, you have enough on your plate. You've already proven what you've done. That's your camera. What do you tell Schuylkill County residents why they should re-elect you?
Well, I respectfully ask for consideration of the vote of Schuylkill County citizens on November 5th. There's much to do, and this could continue to be one of the premier coroner's departments in our state. And again, thank you for your consideration.
And once again, folks, 2 parts. This is part 2 of the show. Part 1, he talked about what he said he was going to do and how it's affecting you, the Schuylkill County residents, how that makes it, keeps it in budget, and so you don't have to pay any more money, at least in this area. And the story about virtual autopsies, the transport of bodies, a lot of things that he discussed, he's accomplished. Now part 2, you heard about the opioid crisis, the recruitment of new physicians, genetic testing, MRIs. So once again, valuable information. Don't vote for this guy because he's a nice guy. vote for the person, any person who has qualifications. I hate when people say, you know, the guy belongs to this club and they love him down there. He tells the best jokes you can and he shakes everybody's hand. And he knows nothing about what the position's all about. But you vote for him because he's a nice guy or a nice girl. Don't do that, folks. We're paying a heavy price for just voting for, sure, they're nice people, but they're affecting your lives. Vote for somebody who has the experience, whether you like him or you don't like him. Okay, don't vote for this guy because he's a nice guy, which he is, but that means nothing. Is he qualified to be Schuylkill County Coroner? He's already proven that. The point is not endorsing anyone, but just telling you that we bring him on for facts. Don't forget to vote November 5th, and we'll see you next time.